have to flex the watch like that. It's okay. We got it. We see it. We see it, Matt. You don't gotta.
It's natural.
You don't gotta.
It's natural.
You don't know. Yeah, Matty, poor boy. Not
poor
with
boy.
that watch. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Episode 37 of Palantir Weekly. Hope everyone's doing well. Welcome back. Episode 37. Is that on my side?
No, we're good. That's my bad. I didn't have it on.
No problem. No problem. You got it. We're here. Thank you all, 33 people, for being here in 25 seconds. We had a very big week. Oh, I forgot to mention to you guys right before we got on. Obviously, we had a crazy macro. So let's talk about that right before we get into high-level thoughts of Palantir earnings. I literally, was preparing for the podcast today, and I was like, wait a second. Palantir had earnings this week? Like, I didn't even realize that there was earnings on Monday, even though that was a big thing, right? The stock tanked, all of that stuff, because of what happened in external financial news. Someone says Discord link says it's invalid. I will put the Discord link in the chat. So thank you for letting me know about that. So quick recap. FTX Financial, $32 billion company, completely collapsed. It's in the gutter. In a matter of a couple of days, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Obviously, liquidation, bank runs. Most people know the story, but they do not have the money to repay all the people that invested money. Everyone has lost money, investors, stakeholders, employees, people who had money on FTX exchange. And it has really affected the financial markets. And at the same time, we are rallying close to 400 on the S&P because we had a CPI print that came in dead cold. And there's just been an insane amount of things going on. So quick thoughts on what's been going on in the markets and how you've been interpreting it. Sachin, we'll start with you. Sachin, you're muted.
So, hey, everyone. My 4 bullets are very simple. I expect the crypto contagion to actually expand from here. I think that's pretty much happened in every bust. Some of the companies go down and they actually spread whatever they are doing in across the market. So I expect this to go deep. Okay, I don't see good, at least near-term future for crypto in general. People would like to see how Coinbase, Kraken, these companies hold. In terms of macro, CPI has printed a little less, but nothing has changed. The midterm uncertainty is still there. The companies are cutting capex. The earnings for major companies are still expected to be lower or muted. Okay. The one good thing which I saw last week during some of my project work is that in the B2B sector, the growth of employees is around 10 to 15%. So companies are hiring in that sector, and the revenues are still growing in that sector. They are not as high as last year, but that sector is a sole winner, at least in the last 5-6 months. And of course, energy is doing fine, but I think energy is also about to hit the pretty much the roof pretty soon as well. Back to you guys.
Sachin just super happy that his puts might actually expire worthless because you've been selling a lot of those puts.
I had I have few hundreds of puts, man. I had quite serious position on that part.
I know, man. I was like, when Palantir did really well this week, I was like, oh man, Sachin must be relieved,
Sachin, as in your hundreds of puts, meaning if Palantir fell below like 650, I don't know what strike price was, you would have had to buy them, obviously. But now that Palantir ended 830 or whatever, you just get to keep the premium. You don't have to buy them.
No, I don't have to buy them. And just to put in context, the position I would have to buy if Palantir had stayed low was bigger than my actual Palantir position. So it was an insane position. Yeah, so if it would have happened, my position in Palantir would have gone 2x plus.
And how are you planning to finance that? Were you talking to a lady that started with an M and ended with an N? Margin?
So I don't use margin. I don't use margin. I don't use margin, okay. So no, I sold one private position, and that was the leverage I have. And I started a new strategy personally for myself, and which is a separate account, entirely for options. So yeah, I'll see how it goes. Okay. My original position is still intact.
Just to recap, this week you made a bet to buy cash secured puts that, if executed, because you were bullish on earnings, right? Obviously, it seems like that's the reason you did it. And earnings weren't that bad, as we'll talk about, but still the stock tanked. So I just want to know real quickly, because this is the value of having someone like you on the stream. What was your mental state in the 3 days before today? Like, were you like, fuck? Or like, how were you thinking? Obviously, you have the cash to finance it. You weren't using margin, but what were you thinking psychologically in this state?
So my thinking is that $8 is a pretty safe level in Palantir at this point. Like even if the stock goes below, it will eventually bounce back. So as long as you're playing in that level, even if for short term you are caught in position, yeah, I mean you will eventually, even if you get like for example 6.5 and you're forced to it, start selling covered calls until it bounce back 8. So at this particular point, so like for me the break even was 7.28, which was already 10% safety margin over my comfortable number. But yeah, I mean any position can go wrong. I mean markets can swing, but I felt it was reasonable risk reward. Okay, you make like 10% over a month. Actually it was not over a month, it was like 20 days. So from that part it was okay. But I mean guys, I mean you, that's the thing I always say, like you need to use options for risk management rather than going all in YOLO. So for me, this short put position is a risk management that I don't want to buy at 8. Well, I feel 8 is safe. So for me, the break even was 7.28, and if I would have ended at 7.28, I would have been selling covered calls at 7.5 and 8. So overall, see, market is gonna stay like this for a while. Okay. The question is, you still need to find ways to make money out of it. So you have long term positions, but as you know, I mean, I practically run my own business along with several part-time positions I have with different companies. So yeah, you need to find out different ways to earn money. And yeah, I mean, this is my idea of making money. We'll see how it goes.
Okay, sounds good. Matt, your thoughts on the FTX collapse?
I don't know. I don't really have too much skin in the game with respect to crypto. For me, it's always just been something where I like to let people know that it's still a somewhat risky asset that's kind of unregulated. So that's one. So I always kind of recommend people only hold less than 5%. So that's kind of just what I kind of adhere to. And then second, if you don't own the keys, then you're not the one that's in control of your cryptocurrency. So long term, I still think it's a great opportunity. I'm still buying every time I get paid. I buy a little bit. I focus more on the equities market rather than the cryptocurrencies, but I still think that it's a good opportunity to set yourself up for the long term in say late 2024, early 2025 when the halving of Bitcoin happens again. But don't be betting or investing money into something that one, you don't know much about, or two, can't afford to lose. And I don't know too much about the FTX part other than a lot of celebrities got burned, a lot of YouTubers got burned. But that's all I really know. And that's continuously what I've kind of been preaching, regardless of FTX or regardless of other exchanges going down, Celsius as well. If you don't own the keys, then you're not in control of it. So always have a hard wallet that you can, or a cold storage wallet that you can move your currency to. I always do that as well. Every time I buy on Robinhood, I immediately send it to my MetaMask where I own the keys and nobody else does. So,
okay. Randall, by the way, everyone, Randall is a new YouTuber as well. I put his link channel description so you guys can check him out. What were your thoughts on the FTX collapse?
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously surprising to see that much money essentially go up in smoke. But I mean, crypto has always been a very volatile asset. Anything built on crypto, anything involved with crypto is going to be a risky bet. And I think to some extent, this was, I mean, the level that this happened to, I think surprised everyone. But something like this was always going to happen as the crypto market sort of move forward and gain maturity. Something like this.
Randall, you're in the development space. Have you worked on crypto projects before, Web3 coding stuff, or not really?
A little bit. It's hard out here because I'm in New York, and in New York there are all sorts of regulations and laws pertaining to crypto that I would run into. But I played with it a little bit, and I've done a fair amount of research on it. And
Okay.
yeah, I really do think that something like this was bound to happen as the market moved forward and became more mature.
Got it. Chris, one of the veterans we have here. Happy Veterans Day to you. Thank you for all of your service. So appreciate you, Chris. If we can get that in the chat for Chris, appreciate that for Chris. We only have our freedoms because people like you actually protected them. What were your thoughts of the FTX collapse?
To be honest with you, it was kind of brewing on my brain for the last 6 months. I mean, ever since Sam came out and just pretty much described a Ponzi scheme, it was like literally this dude described a Ponzi scheme, and yet people were still going. I still remember one of my friends, I was talking to them about, possibly buying some energy stocks because they wanted to get some dividends, right? And some return on that. And she was like, no, I make too much money on staking. And I'm like, what do you mean you make too much money on staking? Like, how much money are you making? She was making quite a bit of money. So I was like, wait a second. How do you get the returns? Well, if I put money in and then it just grows, and then I get more money and I just buy more and then it grows again. I was like, that sounds like a Ponzi scheme. And she's like, no, it's different. You don't understand. And I'm like, I don't understand, Matt. Yeah, I mean, when you see something that crazy, you should always second guess it. Like, money just doesn't grow out of I mean, it grows on trees, I suppose, if you consider paper, but basically it was something that needed to happen, right? This whole concept of staking and everything else, I still don't believe in it. As for FTX, I think they're the first. I don't think that it's going to end with them. I think there's some indication that Binance actually may be next, because Binance has quite a few holdings in something called Binance Coin. But I've never been a big believer in crypto. I went to a couple of presentations in like near where I live in Brooklyn, in Bushwick. It's called Consensus. So I went to a couple of events and I was just not sold on the idea. Like, even with smart contracts and all this other stuff, it's hard to get around understanding the technology. And I was just like, nah, man, if I don't understand the tech, it's not something that I want to take a meaningful position investing in. So yeah, so I try not to invest in anything that has too much crypto exposure. On the other hand, I am considering shorting some stuff that I'm like seeing in the back end that may have crypto exposure that hasn't been necessarily revealed yet. That's the thing that I was talking to Sean about. Remember when Sean put up like a tweet saying, are there any banks that have exposure to crypto? Well, there's a few that actually might have some exposure, but I don't know how deep it goes. So that'll be something interesting to look at. But other than that, not really a crypto guy, so I wouldn't know.
All right.
Is
Dom,
it
your
US
thoughts?
Bank by chance? Because I just saw Buffett drop a bunch of US Bank.
I'm sorry?
Is it US Bank?
Yeah, it's US Bank.
US
How did you know Buffett sold US Bank? Okay.
Wow.
So for the people that don't know, US Bank actually did the last debt sale for Coinbase. So that kind of led me into like a little bit of a rabbit hole into seeing like, oh, wait a second. And they also have, they also have some institutional holdings of crypto assets. But like I said, I don't know how far the rabbit hole goes, to be honest with you. So I'm doing my part to dig, but finding all this stuff, and especially in an unregulated market, is not easy. So, yep.
Okay. Dom, your thoughts?
Yeah. Where to begin? I don't play around with the crypto space. I guess my only exposure would be with Square, and then a little bit of exposure with Silvergate, which is a bank that does do a little transacting with crypto, but they're very, very small positions. It's one thing I don't feel like digging into to try to really fully understand, when equities are a lot easier to understand, manage, value, and play to my strengths and what I understand with SaaS software. So I really focus on those instead.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. So Palantir earnings, big week for us. I want to go through some high level thoughts, and anyone can start off with this, or we can start off with Sachin. What were your initial thoughts when you saw earnings? Any numbers that stood out to you? Any numbers you didn't like? And then we'll keep going from there.
I think the number that I didn't like was the revenue number. So I'm trying to understand like all these big contracts. So from FoundryCon, we know that scale up takes like 12 to 18 months before the big revenue kicks in. Okay. So for example, now this September, they got all this big contract. So I'm still trying to make up my mind, like what's the trigger point at which they start trickling in. It hasn't happened. So at this particular point, the broad question I have on Palantir, that it is a niche good company versus it is a AWS kind of juggernaut for this decade, that is still not been answered. Apart from that, I mean, whatever we have seen in terms of FoundryCon, in terms of growth, I think it was pretty decent. There was a lot of question. People came that growth is slowing. Like, oh, last year it was 100% customer growth. This year, or for the guy, the growth is not slowing. You need to understand the base is expanding. So when the base starts expanding in terms of percentage, a lot of numbers starts going down. Okay. And we need to also remember that this is a year where a lot of uncertainty existed in the market. So whatever has happened is despite that, overall I think I'm still bullish about it. Okay. The only concern I have at this particular point is on the execution, that can they really make it faster and better. Let's see how it goes. Back to you guys.
Okay. Randall, high level thoughts on Palantir earnings.
Yeah, I mean, the market had a really bad reaction to it. There was a huge sell-off on Monday, but the numbers really weren't that bad. You wanted to see, I wanted to see better commercial revenue growth. But the word I would use more than anything is unexciting. Fine, unexciting.
Okay. Chris, high level thoughts.
So going into earnings, I was constantly saying, guys, the number is going to be terrible. Well, not terrible. It's not going to be meaningfully as high as a lot of people are expecting. And the reason was very simple. Palantir is a discretionary product. Okay. Most businesses, they don't need Palantir to come in and do their stuff in order to run their operations. Right now, everyone is in a tight place in terms of spending. So of course, they're not going to say, okay, yes, let's bring a $5 million digital transformation project in, because even on top of the cost of the software alone itself, you have to spend hours training people. You have to spend manpower to do it. You have to get all these other what do you call it? Like things to happen. You have to get computers. You have to get other things just to make things work. And so not a lot of people consider that part. So if the project that they're paying Palantir is $5 million, it's going to cost the company probably another 5, maybe 10 just to implement everything. And then also it's going to take at least a year to get things moving. So in my opinion, this is not something that is going to have a high growth potential in this macro environment. If and when we return to high growth again, Palantir will be able to accelerate their revenue growth again. There was one thing that I noticed in the earnings that I really did like, which I hope some people picked up, which was the total number of clients that they added that were around $1 million. Okay, so $1 million contract. So you can see that now the trend is that they're pushing down market. So gone are the days where they were just, oh my God, we're going to go after the big guys. Like, bro, you've run out of big guys. Now you got to go to everyone, right? So you can see that they're expanding out. And now I think they're going to be able to scale, because that was always the key like weakness in the past that I didn't like, when they were constantly ignoring smaller companies with smaller budgets. Now they figured out that, hey, we can scale our product, which means that we can probably sell it for cheaper and get entrenched into the market. So I think the total customer growth is what we need to start focusing on a little bit more, especially during this recessionary period, because that will be able to kind of say, okay, will those companies meaningfully add the year after that and the year after that? Because if you're paying $1 million and you have a successful product, guess what happens next year? They spend 1.5, and then another year, maybe they'll spend 2. And if it's a really good product and it ends up being something that the business needs, like for significantly, like Tyson Foods does, maybe they become a $5 million a year customer, So I think pushing down market is probably a good thing. So hopefully that ends up translating well into the future. But I'm in agreement with Sachin. I think we are entering a time period where we might not see a lot of growth, and we should kind of position our portfolios for that. It's a great time to start accumulate. Well, it's always a good time to accumulate shares, but now is a really good time to like dollar cost average, because now you know that there are actually some really good support levels in terms of low valuation too. Because if you look at Palantir didn't break below its May lows. I don't know if you guys noticed that. So
The May lows were what, 630 or something?
Mm-hmm. A lot of companies broke their May lows during this second downturn. Palantir was one of the few companies that didn't. So it just goes to show that there might be a floor that's basically there. That Palantir, if it goes below, that there are like probably some hard money in the back just waiting to get in at. So, just from a market sentiment standpoint.
Okay. Dom, your thoughts on earnings?
Is this the high level comment?
Yeah, I love it. Unless there's a specific slide, I could pull it up and I could go to it right now and we could talk.
I mean, I have a lot to say about earnings, so I'll just.
Did he cut out for you guys? He cut out for me.
Can you guys not hear me?
Yeah, you're good now. Go ahead. You got it.
Hear me now? Okay.
Yep.
I don't think it was as bad as what everyone thought. I didn't think the sell-off was warranted. I added shares when it went down to kind of its lowest point. And then it bounced back because of all the macro environment stuff that happened with the rates and inflation, and it's already back up. I think Sachin's spot on with the whole $8 is kind of a safe place where it lives, and you can anything under $8 is a good deal. Was really thrilled with the customer growth, as Chris pointed out, 63% year over year on deals. So they closed a total of 273 deals, up from 167, which shows they are going downstream. They are casting wider nets. Without getting too deep, what I will say is, based off of what we learned with FoundryCon and what we heard in those customer case studies, we're not going to see the expansion and the margin growth and revenue growth that we're really wanting to see with new customers, really for like until years 3 and 4 and above. And we saw that with some specific case studies and how that worked out. And so I don't think maybe this kind of answers Sachin's question. I had some of the same concerns around, or questioning around, when are we going to see that catapult of revenue? It seems like it's just been steady Eddie, but a lot of that is because I think they're not into their second, third, fourth, fifth iteration of projects with Foundry. A lot of customers are starting with that first piece. And it goes back to that contribution margin piece that we saw in their 10Q. It's all, Matt works on this. So Matt, maybe you can actually talk about your customer experience of the usage growth from year 1 of Palantir to what it's like now.
Yeah, I can definitely touch on that. It's pretty significant. I mean, first people are kind of like iffy about what specifically they're using it for, and then people start to understand. And one of the things that I kind of want to highlight is once you kind of understand the capability of not just what Foundry does, but overall the relationship and adjusting your culture to be okay with having Palantir guide you through that. One of the things I wanted to highlight, specifically going back to kind of like FounderCon, because I didn't want to highlight specifically what I was going to talk about for the earnings report to kind of relate back to Sachin and what Chris said, but specifically looking at Morgan Stanley and how they went from an old infrastructure that was on Gotham and then moving it over to Foundry to then be supported by Apollo and stuff of the like, right? That is getting with the company back, several years ago when Gotham, I don't even think they mention Gotham too much anymore to main people. I think they just mostly focus on Foundry now. So that just goes to show the stickiness of those sorts of contracts and how they can continue to grow over time, which I don't think people kind of understand. And not only that alone, but lowering and going kind of back to FounderCon slash going back to the earnings report itself, lowering of that $1 million mark. It's a lot easier to spend $1 million up front and continue to grow with the business and see if that culture clash is something that you're willing to fight due to the value that it's bringing and stuff of the like, which could grow into 20, 30, $50 million contracts that we've seen with some of these other big boys. But now you're getting a lot more people's foots in the door. And so I think that that is something that it might slow growth in, say, years 23, 24. But once people get, and as you've seen, like 60% customer growth year over year, like once we get more and more people through the door, some of them might not be somebody that wants to stick with Palantir long term. Maybe they want more an off the shelf, like a Snowflake. But this is just one product that is currently being kind of advertised, and it's in its infancy for multiple products. And I think Sham really highlighted it specifically within FounderCon, and they highlighted a good bit in every investor relations earnings report is all the other products that they're continuing to develop. But anyway, I think that it's addresses a lot of the concerns that Chris had when he sold and was focusing more on Snowflake. Is they need a better go-to-market strategy, and I think they're really starting to hear that, and I think that they're trying to appease now that they've gotten the aerial industrial extent. They're really trying to move into getting the smaller players and attacking. Sorry, I went on a big tangent there, but
No, that's great. That was great. Real quick, Dom, I'm sorry, we do have to interrupt this broadcast for a commercial. And that commercial is by Palantir themselves, because they have just released a commercial. And I think it's only fitting that we disrupt our broadcast with a commercial, with an actual commercial. So this is Palantir's Army-Navy football game presented by the USSA. I watched this. I want to get your thoughts. I don't know if all of you guys have seen this. I don't know if the audience has seen this, but it's a 30-second commercial that's going to air on Sunday. So let's do this. First of all, let me know if you guys can hear it.
America's game is more than just a game. It's who we
Yes?
are.
Okay. I'll start again. Here we go.
America's game is more than just a game. It's who we are. It's about teamwork and the speed, precision, and grit it takes to win. The game teaches values that anchored my team then and drive my team at Palantir now as we develop America's software advantage. We support our nation's service members by giving them the best technology to win.
Okay, so I want to analyze this real quick because we've had many conversations on the podcast around how they should market themselves, how they should advertise. Obviously, FounderCon was pretty amazing because we saw the clients being able to do the marketing for them. I didn't have the best reaction to this commercial, to be honest. It sounds like they spent a good amount of money creating it. They paid some ad agency or whatever. Then they're going to charge, I don't know, a primetime 30-second spot on a TV ad, probably $300,000-$400,000 doing. Like, do you guys think this is a commercial that people are going to see and feel some type of brand affinity to Palantir that would lead to C-suite executives reaching out, or you think this is purely branding? Any thoughts on this commercial? Anyone can take a stab at it.
So let me go first. So I mean, the challenge I think in the general public and the C-suite right now is that people had very strong beliefs about whether technology should support defense and other things. And whatever happened over the last 2 years, people are asking questions back, were they right or wrong? Okay, so this is a time like a lot of people may not say it openly, but people are asking questions. We have seen what happened with all the ESG funds and all. So at this particular point, reinforcing your branding and a message is very clear. Like, for example, we see what they have done about Ukraine. And we have seen a lot of companies do a lot of virtue signaling, but they didn't do anything actually right. So it is a very targeted ad in my point of view. And I think it is good because they are going that this is what we do. We are proud of it and we'll keep doing it. Okay. And when you talk about CEOs in general, I think there is several studies that show that most of the people who reach the C-suite levels are up to some extent narcissistic. Okay, people want success. People want success in a short term. If they are having a clear evidence, they don't mind touching Palantir for that. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, I think I like the ad. I mean, they are getting open, because what was happening for last 2-3 years, especially between 2018 to 2020, they were still doing what they were doing, but they were getting like completely out of limelight. Okay, so that Guardians doesn't attack them, Open Democracy doesn't attack them, and they didn't change, but now they are just embracing it more. I think it's a
So
good
you think
move.
it's a very pro-America sort of branding appeal, and it's going in a right direction on TV?
Yeah, I think Palantir is a very American company. I mean, though they say that, I mean, they are focused on Western democracy and all that, but guys, to be fair, I mean, whatever is happening in Europe and in terms of policy, in terms of business, I mean, Palantir is far better than that. Palantir is a truly American company. The only thing which is very different in Palantir from rest of the Silicon Valley is that Palantir has made up independent opinion and position when it comes to support policies, their positioning on data monetization and data support and data ownership than rest of the Silicon Valley. And the challenge is that if they succeed in that kind of business models, it wipes a lot of business value out of many companies in Silicon Valley. So the war between them and Silicon Valley is true, but we have already seen that even the companies, so-called companies we are talking about, they themselves are partnering with Palantir. So it's a kind of a symbiotic partnership. There are companies, I mean, which does defense work and government work, but they don't publicize it. Okay, then there are companies who only does government work, so they don't have to worry about anything happening outside that. But Palantir is very clear. As I said, that we are not a government company, we are not a commercial company. We want to bring best technology advantage to everyone who is trying to deploy the Western values and want to ensure that there is a very clear accountability on the data ownership. So their mission is clear. The mission is tough. Okay. And they have challenges actually from politicians from both aisles. Okay. I think let's not get into that part of the debate. But they are trying to reform their position at this particular time. I think it's pretty fair, because people are realizing that, I mean, war was not some concept of past. It is happening, and it can spread more than whatever it is happening in the Europe. So you need to know whether if it happens that whether Americans are on the safe side or the NATO's on the safe side. So why not?
So I have a better commercial than the one you showed that no one else knows. I was going to do it on my channel, but you know what? Since we're bringing it up, I'll put it up. All right.
We're not hearing anything.
Oh, that was you guys? Oh, Chris, we don't hear anything.
Oh, hold on 1 second. Sorry about that, guys. I got to share.
If it is, it's really low.
All right, hold on 1 second.
Yeah, this commercial is from a couple of years ago, Chris.
No, that one's the one with Georgia. Hold on.
Janko?
Let me show you. Yeah, this is a new one that hasn't even been released to the public yet. So
Really? We got an exclusive. Okay.
or at least I haven't seen it anywhere else. So let's do that. 1 second.
Okay, here we go.
At the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, much of the work we do is like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Without Palantir's tools, I don't think that we could do what we do each and every day.
Tech company Palantir has changed how NCMEC is finding missing children and fighting to end child exploitation. Last year, NCMEC received 29 million reports, which included more than 84 million images and videos of potential child sexual abuse material. Identifying and locating an exploited child can be challenging, with over 70,000 cyber reports coming into NCMEC every day. That's where Palantir comes in. Palantir's transformational software, called Foundry, is able to sift through NCMEC's databases and recognize trends fast.
We can run one search across one system internally, and it brings back results related to missing children, attempted abductions, unidentified child remains, and non-compliant sex offenders. So you may find connections that were harder to identify before. Say we have a child sex trafficker that may be involved in controlling multiple different missing kids across our systems. Offenders are constantly changing their tactics in how to target kids for exploitation. And at the National Center, we have an obligation to keep up with those trends. Now, through the power of Foundry, we can do that. We can put out information about what's happening right now and better protect children.
Since Palantir's partnership with NCMEC, there have been more than 2,000 arrests and over 400 children rescued. Tonight, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children honors our great technology partner, Palantir.
That's a hell of an ad. Chris, we can't hear your mic now.
What I tell you guys, right? So you can see at this point, companies like this, they transcend working with the government, working with the commercial side. At the end of the day, this is the kind of company you want to be. Even if, let's say, it's out of the monetary region, you want to invest in a company that's actually doing good for all these people out there that are like, Palantir does, data collection and privacy and all this other shit. Bro, dude, they're literally helping people. I mean, like, literally child exploitation. They're helping find these fucking predators, man. I gotta ask any of these liberal groups that are out there, like, what are they called? What's that one in the UK? Global Initiative or whatever, or Foxglove. What are the companies that you think that you want to invest in? Because this is what Palantir does. And I can tell you, there's not hundreds, but there's other examples of stuff like this that Palantir is doing that isn't put out there nearly as much as it should, because this is the kind of like, like heartstring pulling commercials that you really need to put out there. So I don't know, just my take.
Let's not even look at the heartstrings. And it was a very good commercial, and it does make you proud to be a shareholder for sure. Look at what we were talking about not even a year ago, right? Chris, you sold your shares because you weren't happy with their go-to-market. You weren't happy with how they were making themselves perceived in the technology community. Since then, we've had 2 customer conferences that were phenomenal, that showed quantifiable use case studies and also got customers in a room to speak together and how they're using the technology and how they're getting ROI and building a community, right, at the enterprise level. Then you look at now having formal commercials on games that are nationally televised. We look at seeing their logo at hockey games. I was in the Nashville airport and saw the Ferrari advertisement. I've searched Google before, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a Foundry ad comes for signing up. Do you want to, get this white paper? You look at, they're now having 25 supply chain projects that they have just in last quarter. So they're continually, not saying we're responsible for it, but I'm sure someone there at Palantir is listening to the community and watching and paying attention to Twitter and other things. And they're executing and being more like a technology company that we're used to seeing, and being in technology conferences. I would not be surprised if you saw Palantir at AWS reInvent next year, maybe this year, who knows? The event's in December, but starting to see those things that Chris and Sachin, we're used to seeing companies out of Gartner's tape. We saw them get IDC reports. We saw them get Forrester reports. We're starting to see them act more in the public eye as a commercial technology company, and they're growing their commercial business at scale. They're doing what we've asked, and they're still protecting their base with $2.4 billion in cash and $930 in credit with no debt. So I definitely feel confident they're gonna be able to weather any storms coming up in the economy.
Okay. I'm going to share the actual presentation and go to some certain slides that I wanted to talk about. I think the most disappointing thing for people was the commercial revenue growth. right? The specific slide or commercial customer growth, I believe, was one of those. It was decreasing or deaccelerating. Yeah, this was the one right here. So commercial revenue growth year over year, obviously we went from 37, 47, 54, 46, 17. I know Chris said it's discretionary spending and stuff of that nature, but was this, I mean, how did you guys feel about ultimately seeing this?
That was a reflection of Europe and all their other countries besides the US, in my opinion.
Well, they didn't have too many ads in Europe at all because I mean, European countries right now, they're trying to decide whether they can, heat their homes and their businesses and keep them going. So outside of the US, the economy is even like we have it bad in the US, but the minute you go outside the US, it's even worse. So, yes, the total commercial revenue growth is not there, but once again, the importance here is not to focus on the revenue, it's to focus on the total customer growth. Because like I said, if they're pushing down market, yes, you're going to definitely see some revenue growth compression. But just like anything else, all of that stuff, if it's an effective product, will accelerate in the future. So they're making a smart move right now by pushing down market and getting market share,
So, so if a CEO shows me this slide, okay, this only tells me one thing, that there are less boots on the ground. See, if you see as the percentage has changing, but if you see the absolute number of customer count, it's pretty much in that ballpark of 2025. It is pretty much telling that the sales force needs to be beefed up on the ground. Okay, because at the end of the day, when you are going to add customers, you need to put salespeople on the ground, and it's only, I mean, it's to me, it's more internal restrictions rather than growth. I mean, I support companies for data strategy in Europe. So in terms of market, in terms of macro, I think there are uncertainties at times, but then people are also looking to invest more. I also understand that most of the people they have hired recently, they're still not in that bracket of that 9 months, 12 months, and they still have to deliver these deals. Cracking deal in Europe is longer than what you do most of the time in the US and other part of the world as well. So yeah, I mean, to me, it's a message to beef up their sales team. It's nothing else. Back to you guys.
So to me, that this is a late 2021, early 2022 problem that is now being reflected in the revenue numbers for Q3, right? So just as Sachin has said, it takes some time to get some of these deals through the door, right? It's not going to happen instantaneously. Just like how we had the 1.3 total contract value show up in Q3 of this quarter, doesn't mean we're going to see all 1.3 billion within the next 2 years or 1 year or 2 quarters or something of the like, right? So it's going to take some time for that. And I think beefing up of that, like Sachin had said, I think is from what they had seen, maybe a slowdown in the cyclicalness of some of the total contract values kind of coming through, because there is a really good slide in here where you did see the kind of total contract value kind of take a dip early in late 2021, early 2022, and then it started to kind of come back up to where it is today, which for Q3 was 1.3 billion. So I'm hoping that with the increased sales force and with the increased customer count, which Q3, everyone's very excited about FoundryCon, and I think it's been well received by the broader, not just investor community, but also potentially customers. Those numbers aren't probably going to show up until 1Q, 2Q of next year, because they're not going to turn around. I mean, it just happened 2 weeks ago. It's not going to turn around and everyone's going to close deals magically in Q4. And so then 1Q, 2Q of next year, you're going to have a flood of deals come in. But even still, that revenue is not going to show up until late 23 or late 2024. So anyway, maybe I'm just rambling and justifying, but that's just kind of how I perceived the slowdown this time. But it is something I'm definitely watching.
Did any of you guys read their blog on Medium, Palantir Foundry for Positive Disruption recently?
Yep.
It came out November 4th. Highly, highly recommend you guys all read that. I try to read any of the ones they put up on their Medium page because Palantir has their own blog. This is from a former CTO for the Prime Minister's office in the government of Israel and is now a Palantir forward deployed engineer. His name's Eran Witkon. and it was a superb read. It's a short read, but he goes through an interview on what makes Palantir so special. And to get any like CTO at that level to come and work for Palantir out of Israel makes some of the best cybersecurity and best security and software programs in the world. And to hear his take on the ontology, and he's been at Palantir since 2016. And his analogies of what it does for the business and mixing the IT teams and the business teams and co-oping that both can use the technology to drive business results. It's a really good read that helps you understand, anyone who's a new shareholder or just new to Palantir in general, of what the value prop is to their software versus anything else. It definitely conveys the message from an outsider coming in and saying, this is why I'm here. Like, we're doing things that drive business value results, and the way software is being procured is going to change that. Results will have to be proven. And I know Sachin works as a consultant and deals with that a lot with companies and customers. To actually, now they're starting, you can't just buy a software and have a big digital transformation project and not deliver a result. Even Chris, I know you deal with this, the IT and healthcare. I mean, now IT is being expected to show me the cost savings or show me the revenue generation. Give me one of those two, but I'm not giving you an open blank check to buy some software if you're not going to be able to do one of the two. Back to you.
I think if I may add just 2 points. See, whenever we see these numbers, I think this is applicable for any company. You see that commercial growth is slowing or any number is changing in the statistics, and we try to look for high level. Just take a step back. See, if a growth is slowing, then 3 things are happening. First is that there may be some gap in outreach to customer. There may be a better product in the market, or people are spending less. I mean, when we talk about the first point, like outreach to customer, we know this has been a traditional weakness for Palantir. When you talk about like our customers spending less, yeah, I mean, Europe is in a mess of its own at this particular point. People are spending money, but people are taking longer to do so. The third is there a better product in the market? I mean, at least I'm not aware of a better product in the market. And what you have seen on FoundryCon, I don't see that people still have to spend more on digital. People still have to deploy more automation and AI. They still need to integrate their data. They still need to figure out how to build new businesses based on digital economy. They still need to deploy more complex use cases that companies like Databricks and Snowflake has traditionally struggled. So overall, yeah, I see the graph, but when I take a step back, I'm not concerned about it at this particular point. Back to you guys.
I also wanted to take a moment to highlight, European commercial growth is down year over year, but European government growth is through the roof. And I think it really points to a strength in the company that as these European companies, and I think just companies in general, spend less of their budget on discretionary things like Palantir, that usually means that the economy is in bad shape, and that means that the government business is going to in turn ramp up. So they almost have the government business as a foundation that in both times they can build off of.
Yeah, I agree with that. And obviously the stuff that happened in Ukraine definitely bolstered European government growth. This slide was also a bit concerning. 17% operating margin versus 30% last year. Stock-based compensation is down 29% year over year, so that's awesome. Obviously, stock-based compensation is still high. But anyone have any thoughts on the margin going down? I mean, it seems like it's mainly headcount, but any concerns there, Chris? Go ahead.
The thing is, if you're pushing down market, this is what happens. This is one of the effects that you're going to run into, which is the revenue that you're going to get on a per employee basis is going to be lower, right? The work that you're doing is not going to be there right up front, but this is an investment in the long-term future of the company, right? By pushing down market, instead of only getting $5 million contracts where you're going to get a 30% margin, you're going to, maybe work with a $1 million contract, but you're still going to get a 17% margin today. Once everything is implemented and everything else, the forward contract that you get, the continuation, all of that stuff is going to be super high margin because now you're not spending nearly as much in implementation costs. So this is what they need. This is the kind of stuff that they need to do. I could care less right now about operating margins as long as I see customer growth, or on the other hand, revenue growth, which is both good. But I honestly prefer them to get as many customers as possible, get as much market share as possible, and then eventually work on generating a higher net dollar retention. Right now, you can't go to a company and says, okay, our program starts at 5 million and expect them to do tremendous amount of business, so.
Yeah, I think just adding on to that, this net income piece is always kind of confusing to folks because it does include the share-based compensation. And I want to get back to the share-based compensation in just a second. But one of the things that I mostly look for is the cash flow from operations, and that's still healthy. So year over year, they're still going to generate about $300 million in cash to the bottom line. So this time next year, they'll have not just 2.4 billion in the bank, but 2.7 billion in the bank if things continue at the rate that they are. And then couple that with the 950 million of secured credit line that they're not using. So they have the ability to use, upwards of close to $4 billion that they have at their disposal, which they have yet to. Couple that with going back to the share-based compensation. I was having a good conversation with a good friend of mine who I chat with and whose opinion I take very, very much into account with a lot of these things. And a lot of tech companies pay share-based compensation. You have to consider that the price of the stock has decreased substantially. So if you're getting, let's just say for an example, 1,000 shares as part of your quarterly compensation, that 1,000 shares used to be worth 10 grand. Now it's worth 7 grand. And that's just, let's just say if it's a flat based number. So it might not necessarily mean that the amount of shares are being technically diluted. That's something I'd want to technically look at. It just might be the value of those shares, which shows up impacting the net income at the end of the day, shows up as a lower amount. So that's something I'm probably going to look at, is just the share count over time and if that's truly decreasing as well.
Okay. I think let's get into SBC then. Matt, maybe you can start us off on that. What were your thoughts on that? It's down from 180 million Q3 2021 down to 140. So that's not horrible. Still bad, but it seems like we got to hire more sales force and pay more people. So any thoughts on decreasing SBC, but still high SBC? Or if anyone else has thoughts. I overall thought it was good. I'm like, all right, it's going down.
Think about it this way. It's going down and the stock is cheaper right now, so it's not costing the company as much money, right?
Yep.
And trying to do is play the long game. They are not concerned or 2Fs about giving stock shareholders a big return this year, next year. They're focused on winning industries. They've won oil and gas. You've seen them get BP. They've gotten several others now, Exxon. Now they're looking at 25 different supply chains that they got deals going on. Look at the Hyundai deal. No one's talking about how they score a $25 million deal January 4th of this year. And then they score a $20 million 5-year expansion within the same year. There's not many software companies getting people to do that. That's showing true value, realized value quickly. And once they start doing this in other industries and it starts spreading like wildfire, you're going to see more examples like Skywise, where whoever builds this killer app for whatever industry, could be Jacobs for water and waste. They just announced an expansion and they didn't announce how much money the expansion was for. Once you start seeing that, then you can see that being the predominant application that an entire industry uses, like Skywise for transportation. Sachin, have you heard of any other industries that Palantir has been used, or you could foresee that I don't know what you can and can't talk about, but just as far as their expansion into other industrials?
So, I mean, everything I know about Palantir regarding this question is not from the public sources, so I may not be able to help to answer this. Two things I would say. Um,
I thought I would ask. It was
that
worth a shot.
Yeah, so two things I would say that I can say in terms of sectors where I'm seeing a lot of activity. I think one is my own sector, energy. We have seen earlier this year that there was one super major they managed to break in. I knew that last year in the same super majors, Snowflake was struggling to deploy some of the use cases. So I mean, it gave them like 4 or 5 months window, and this year Palantir moved. So energy is something that is coming extremely strong. Okay, one thing where I expect Palantir to do well is that most of the discussion I'm having with incumbents, especially with senior executive management, is they are looking to launch new businesses. They say, okay, we have this data, we have this equipment, and how do we monetize the data on it? I mean, everybody has told a lot of time, oh, we want to monetize the data. The question is how. I mean, what value are you going to bring? How are you going to package it? And there are like different models people are talking about it. So the work I do, I mean, I presented like 4 different models. So one model is that you have to do a platform play. That means you make a platform where everybody can come and build things. That is one. The second is that you make a data marketplace. Okay. The third is looking is in terms of is that you actually go and help people in building analytical model and actually solving problems for them. The challenge is that they have all these 3, 4, 5 different models, everyone, but if you want to actually do it, you need like 20 companies, as we saw in the case of Tyson Food. Okay, even internally as well as externally. So if you want one company, that company is Palantir. Okay, so next year probably we are going to see more incumbents launching businesses on Palantir, as we saw in the case of Skywise and the Syntropy. It's going to happen. It's going to happen a lot. The thing is, Palantir has to figure out how to do it faster. Okay, everyone loves new revenue. I mean, yeah, you are sorting your own operations. You are running an operating system for your organization. You are improving your supply chain. I mean, you are deploying your predictive maintenance and prescriptive maintenance in a better way. That's fine. That is to optimize cost. But there is nothing sexy about getting new. I mean, optimizing cost when you compare it with the getting new revenue. Okay, so the clients have optimized cost. They cannot optimize cost forever. 1 year, 2 year, you are pretty much done. At that point, you need to deploy this capital save into new revenue making, and that's the cycle we are about to enter. And this is exactly what I saw earlier this year, that people who have managed and optimized a lot of costs and they are looking to deploy new use cases, they are struggling with a lot of different, I mean, what do you say, like this Frankenstein monster of like 20 companies you are playing with. And these companies are growing at a different pace. Some of these companies talk to each other well, some of these, they don't. So you need like a one end-to-end solution if you're looking especially the revenue part or new revenue part or digital revenue part we are talking about. Okay, we just saw that example that Chris has shared. We are talking about like, so the idea was that they're getting like 84 million reports and images and data, and they have to find something fast out of it to make it meaningful. It's not about just getting data. The first part of digital transformation is, can we get one single source of truth? Single source of truth for what? You need to do something with that truth and to make it an actionable insight, to turn it into a product that can be used. And that is what the cycle I'm more interested about. So let's see how it turns out next year.
Okay. I think that pretty much ends our show, unless anyone has anything to say. Chris,
midterms. Let's do midterms real quick.
Okay, let's do that's our last segment. Midterms. How do you think that affects Palantir?
So Blake Masters is probably not going to win Arizona, which is fine.
No,
Blake
he lost. He lost. It's
I know. But JD Vance, who Peter Thiel backed very heavily, did win in Ohio. So there are a few other people that I know that are behind. I wouldn't say behind, but basically Peter Thiel is really up there in terms of supporting. That might bode well for Palantir, especially if the Republicans end up taking back the Senate, right? That means from a legislative standpoint, there might be some legislation that comes out that doesn't necessarily like preclude Palantir from involvement. Trust me, if anyone here thinks that government and business are two separate entities, it's not. It's not. There's, especially when you're playing in this field, you can have legislators really mess up your business. Like here's an example: Facebook, right? Facebook right now, if let's say the government comes out and says, let's ban TikTok, who's the main beneficiary? Meta, right? So what do you think Meta lobbyists are doing in DC right now? They're lobbying to get TikTok banned in the US. Easy, right? Palantir, same thing. You think Raytheon right now with the Titan contract isn't lobbying the shit out of everyone they can to almost like make Palantir out to be like a toxic entity, have like investigations like, oh, is Palantir stealing American citizens' data and all this nonsense? Dude, they're doing everything they can. So I would say by having someone like JD Vance, who was funded by Peter Thiel, ends up helping out. I also want to just mention Sam Bankman-Fried was the second largest donor to the Democratic Party outside of George Soros. And now that Sam Bankman-Fried is pretty much broke, that only leaves George Soros. The next what is that thing called? Next election. You know, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Maybe, and we still have one more Senate seat to see what happens. So if we do get a divided Congress, maybe that does have an impact on Palantir. But there wasn't a red wave as people thought there was going to be. So,
well, I never said there was going to be a red wave. I spoke against it. I got flamed on Adam. I was on Adam Bergman's podcast, and I was like, look, guys, the abortion thing definitely ruined it for Republicans. If it wasn't for the abortion legislation, Republicans probably would have took the midterms in both the House and the Senate. Like, I know that they're going to probably get the House right now, but they might end up, and who knows about the Senate, but if the abortion topic hadn't come up, like with the Roe v. Wade overturning, Republicans handily would have won majority of the seats that they were targeting.
Okay. See, I mean, as someone who is living on the other part of the world, not a Republican, not a Democrat at all. When I see the U.S. election, my first impression was both parties are trying very hard to lose, whether it's Republicans and whether it's Democrats. I mean, they were bringing the worst fractions of their parties, and they're promoting them, the kind of language that is being used, all the political narrative that goes on their propaganda houses like Fox and CNN. I mean, they tried really hard to lose both of them. Okay, there were some key questions. One of the question was that how much hold Trump has on the party. Okay, some of the candidates say backed one, but I mean, it is very clear that with Trump they lost last election. And with Trump, they were expecting, at least some people were still thinking like, okay, red wave happened, how much Trump contributes. The question people are asking now is whether the success, whatever the Republican has, it happened because of Trump, or because of Trump, they actually failed to cross the line. Okay, that's a doubt that will go really, really deep. I mean, going forward, at least people who are supporting him internally within. I mean, for Democrats, I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're not just getting anything right at this particular point. I mean, they are actually in a better position in these elections because of whatever mistakes Republicans have done. The president is still the same. Some days he wakes up, some days he says something. I mean, I don't know how to actually back someone who is in this situation, and there is like complete quietness. Whatever happened with his son's business, he was asking few days back, okay, we should need to look into Elon Musk's business. I'm sorry, but we need to first look into Hunter Biden business. Whatever things have happened.
That's right. Get him.
So I mean, when I look back, I mean, if you ask, like, see, I mean, I like I said, I'm not American. I don't support either of these parties. I'm very like a case-based supporter in a way. So when you ask me, like somebody sitting outside, like about Trump, I cannot support Trump either. Okay, because it doesn't matter. Like some of the policies he did and some of the things he said, I mean, they turned out true. But he ran the president office like his home business. Okay, there are few things he did good. I mean, he didn't get involved in any war. I appreciate that. The thing he done on businesses, and yeah, it's decent. But the challenge in the 2016 election was that people actually tried to project Trump as a good guy. I mean, Trump is a hustler. I mean, he's been in lawsuits and here.
Sachin, I disagree. It wasn't that Trump was a good guy. It's Hillary was shitty. Like everyone, even
No,
the
I agree.
Democrats could have told
No,
you that. Yeah.
even I mean, like that. I mean, I totally agree on that. But like, see, for example, like if you say like, so it is fair to say that Clinton has a fair control over the Democrats. At least it appears from where I'm sitting. Okay, she was Secretary of State. Okay, Tulsi Gabbard was a senator that time. And if Tulsi is a Russian agent, why she was not able to figure out with all the resources? The moment Tulsi went and said that I'm going to support Bernie Sanders, the whole Democrat media went against her, and they ensured that her future in Democrat Party is over. So when you have like parties like who are trying, people like Joe Rogan, people like Elon Musk, people like myself, if you ask me like 6 years back, if I have to eventually put a party, I mean, I probably would have picked Democrats over Republicans. I mean, you're trying to avoid and you're trying to actually disalienate these kind of people. Why? And all these policies that we are having, I mean, I'm someone who supports, I mean, LGBT rights. But what is happening in US, that is, I don't support that. I'll be honest. I mean, to me, that's something else. What is going on in terms of, see, I believe that when you talk about worlds, yes, racism is everywhere. I lived in different countries. I exactly know what I have felt. But the way Democrats have now packaged racism and what needs to be done to actually remove it, no, I think it's only going to make things worse. Okay, so when I'm seeing these two parties, I'm finding that at least as an outsider, they're not bringing their best. In a way, that the election result is actually very good for the market because no party is getting like a clear wave kind of situation. That means both parties are at the toes, and at least I hope some of the leaders go back and try to introspect that, guys, why this is happening. Do we need to change leadership? Do we need to bring a different kind of mentality? Because currently, what is being propagated in both parties, it doesn't work on a bipartisan level. If you promote Marjorie Taylors and if you promote AOC, you do not expect them to sit in the house and work together. They will never work together. And in order to have a functioning democracy, both parties at least have to work together up to on the core issues. You cannot have a foreign policy that changes with president every time. See, when we talk about like Middle East and we talk about China, these countries are thinking 30 years ahead. We'll be doing this in 30 years. Now, when the Trump came, Trump said, okay, I'm going to pull out from climate. Then Joe Biden came and Joe Biden said, oh, we are going to go back. Guys, just make up your mind. At least sit together in a room and decide what is the American. Okay, you can change things on the periphery, but you have to at least decide. And there is another thing started is in the US politics is like the first day amendments. Like when the president comes in on first day, he signs like 40 things. Guys, I mean, what do you expect? If Trump has done it, then Biden has done it. The next president will come. He will be forced to do it. I mean, please. I mean, this is not a sign of a functioning democracy. There is a Senate. There is a House. There is judiciary. Okay, I think we need to go through with the process. We saw what happened with the student loan. I mean, the decision could have come before election, but conveniently it didn't come before election. Okay, so at this particular point, I really like what the results are coming in. Okay, because both parties would be on toes and both leadership will be on toes. They need to really check themselves. Okay, back to you guys.
All right. We definitely got to end it there now, getting late in the stream. But I think this was a great discussion, great recap of earnings, obviously great recap of how the midterms affects Palantir. And the stock price tanked, but it came back. And the question now is if it's going to be able to sustain itself. Has it consolidated or is it going to come down more if the indices also pull themselves down? And we will find out over time. All right. Well, that's it. Thank you, 137 people, for being here. In the chat, all the descriptions to everyone's YouTubes and Twitters. You can check them out. And next week, we'll see you for episode 38. Bye, everybody.
See you guys.